Hello and welcome to TimeWielder's final presentation. I am the project manager, Nate Roberts. With me is the designer, Aspen Call, and our two developers, Jackson Sear and Danny McNulty. An overview of the problem. Our major problem we are trying to solve is a task management application for people with inattentive disorders. In modern society, there's a lot of distractions, especially with our phones, notifications, and the like, and social media. Very easy to get distracted, very easy to get off task, and very easy to fall behind. So, what we are trying to do with our application is make a way to sort of counter that and create a way for people who have issues managing time to manage it effectively and then remind them to stay on task.
Yeah, so this is the app overview of TimeWielder. Like Nate said, the problem was trying to keep people on task, keep them focused, and completing their tasks and tracking them properly. So we have a calendar here on our app that allows you to input tasks, and you can check your tasks on a certain day and see how many tasks you have done for that you need to do for that day. We also have some notifications. They're not it's not they're not automated yet, but we do have some notification functionality to where we push notifications to remind people to stay on task and complete their tasks.
For our user stories, these are the most important ones that we feel that we came up with. And so they go as follows. As a user of TimeWielder, I want to be able to create a list of tasks and set due dates for them in order to keep track of them in a way that makes sense to me. As a user of TimeWielder, I want to be able to sign into TimeWielder using my Google account. As a user of TimeWielder, I should be able to see all my scheduled assignments, tasks, etc. in a single calendar view so that I can have every task and when to do them laid out in front of me. As a user of TimeWielder, I want to be able to click on a certain date and see the tasks due on that particular day. And finally, as a user of TimeWielder, I want to be notified to be reminded to stay on task. And these are the ones on this slide are the ones that we have implemented already. And you will be able to see ones that we want to implement in the future in the next few slides.
So this is a demo, a few screenshots of what our actual application looks like. So this is the sign-in screen. You can just see the logo along with the sign-in button, which will allow you to sign into the website through your Google account. And on this main page, you can see the calendar. You can choose any of those days. Um, and on the right, you'll see the list of tasks for that day. There's an example of a task being added, and you can see there's a small button there that says it's not done. Currently, that button is not functional. Our plan in the future is to make that functional so you can mark whether or not you've completed your tasks.
Down in the corner here, you can see there's a notification saying attention. Make sure you are completing your tasks. Uh, that's the notification functionality we have right now. We can't, not automated yet, so we have to automatically push them or manually push them rather. Excuse me. Push the notifications, whatever, and plan on trying to, or for future plans, we plan on making that fully automated. Here are some of the functional requirements we do and we liked. System shall System shall allow the user to create an account in the system. Users shall be able to create a list of tasks. Users shall be able to input due dates for each listed task. And systems shall give users the option to connect their email or phone number to receive notifications. And we plan on doing that one in the future or for the next people who pick up this project.
So these are our non-functional requirements. The most important ones are 90% of users should be able to input a single task in less than 30 seconds. Um, the next one is buffering should not exceed 5 seconds after any action, like adding tasks or whatever. And the application should be able to handle at least 100 tasks per user.
So these are our use cases. This is an example of one that has already been implemented into the app. So this is the use case for creating a task. And for this one, the user should be able to create a task and add it to their calendar to-do list and or Kanban board. And the precondition is that the user is logged in, and the success post condition is that a task is created and the details are stored in the database. And the steps go as follows. The user clicks the Create Task button on the page. The system displays the task page with the fields to fill out. Then the user fills in the details as required and clicks the Add Task button. And then the system adds the task to the calendar or to-do list and then adds the details of that task to the database. And this is another example of a use case that we have not implemented yet, which is adding a subtask to a task. And so the goal of this one is for the user to be able to add a subtask in order to make the overall task more manageable. And the precondition for this use case is that the user has signed in and the user has created a task. And the success post condition is that the system has added the subtasks to the user's Kanban board and also added the details to the database. And the steps are as follows. The user clicks the Create Subtask button on the tasks page. The system displays the subtask page with the relevant fields. The user fills in the fields as required and clicks the Add Subtask button. And the system adds the subtask to the Kanban board, and the details are added to the database. And again, this has not been implemented in the current version of the application, but is to be implemented in the future.
Here's one sequence diagram. This is one that we have not implemented yet. It's beginning a study session, and the idea behind it is users would be able to click a button and begin a study session for a certain amount of time and just sit there and really focus and lock in and or all other outside distractions and just study for what they need to do. Here's one that we do have, one sequence diagram that is in the app. It's task creation, where as Jackson demoed earlier, you click on a button called create a task and you fill out the fields, which are date, task description, and save it, create the task, and it'll pop up on your to-do list.
So here we have the domain model. If you look at it right here, you'll see initially when you get into the application itself, the first thing that's rendered is the login area, which has a single sign-in button, which we'll call the Use Sign-In with Google. This will pop up Google's extension to allow you to sign in through your Google account, which will give us the user, which is then passed to the calendar page. The calendar page being the center of everything else, as it is the major page of the application. On the calendar page, you will find the task list itself, which is gotten through database info in the top left, which uses information that is given in the use collection. It takes that information and displays it in a task form. We also have next to the task list, the task form itself, where you're able to select a date on the calendar, which will be the due date, and you will write down the name and a description of the task, which will then be saved. Uses this handle submit event down here to prevent the page from reloading, and it is sent to the use collection and then displayed in the database info. The calendar we use is also an external library. So now just going into some detailed diagrams, we have some subsections. Right here, we can see the login section right here, using the sign-in with Google. Then we have the task list itself, which is just the display section. It's shown on the calendar page. You can see database info here. This takes in the user and their date that is going to be selected. And it also takes in from the on the use collection, it finds the task list associated with that date and that user and displays them. Here we have, of course, calendar page. Having gone over this in the main model, this is a bit of a repetition, but we have the calendar page here. It renders the calendar with an external library, renders the task form. People input things in the task form, goes to the use collection, is shown in the database info, which is shown on the calendar page. The task form itself uses handle submit to prevent the page from reloading, and I render a task form specifically to show all the information on the front end. This image is actually from the sort of a future plans type of thing because the Kanban to-do list are not implemented yet. But this is a general plan for what we're trying to go for in the future. As you can see, we have a very small application right now. The task list in terms of classes is definitely the greediest. All it does is take in info that's given from others and displays it. With calendar, of course, we have showing the date, task form being where task name and task description are implemented. It takes in the date from calendar, database info taking all the info from task form, and the user also giving its information to the task list, the user being the owner of database info.
This is our Kanban board, our personal team Kanban board, and this is what it looks like as of today, December 12th, 2022. As you can see, there are much more issues that are done than are shown here, but there are still some in progress, such as working on the design of the overall website, notifications, refactoring and reformatting the sign up and login pages, as well as implementing a functionality to delete tasks from the list.
So here we can see the current state of our products backlog. You can see in progress here some of the user stories we noticed on the Kanban board in both Icebox in progress and slightly into the backlog, new issues. There are less here because we broke some of them up into smaller sections to be able to take them in smaller bite-sized chunks. This will be updated as future development is done. This is the most recent sprint backlog. Of course, all these documents can be found with the links on the presentation, but this is our development for the final sprint of the project during class. As you can see, there was a lot of reformatting done. There were some new classes added, and other than that, we did a lot of UX updating. Thank you, Aspen. And some updates from previous deliverables, and retroactively doing test-driven development from earlier in the semester before we had implemented it.
And speaking of test-driven development, here you can see some of the tests that we have implemented into the app. These are all the tests that we have so far, and as we continue working on this application, more tests will definitely be added. But right now we have the tests including the following: the sign-in, checking if the sign-in with Google button is rendered, checking if the text not logged in is rendered on the login page, checking if the text on the calendar is rendered, checking if the task list is rendered, checking if the logo appears in the top left corner of the page, checking if the task form information is rendered, checking if the task name appears after the task is submitted, and finally, checking if the task description appears after a task is submitted.
On this slide, we have our security concerns. The main one is that the way that we store the tasks in the Firestore database isn't very secure. The way that you're tied to your tasks is just your username. So if you were to log in with somebody else's name, you could see all their tasks. And we don't use any sort of encryption for the information we collect, so you shouldn't use any sensitive information with this application. And here you can see the division of labor for this project. On the left side, you can see programming. Nate, Aspen, and Danny were all responsible for about 20% of the programming. Nate did the task form design. Aspen did the CSS general site design and testing. Danny set up the notifications, and then I did the calendar and database stuff, which is approximately 40%. And then the other three team members split the design documents pretty evenly, and I was much less involved on those, mostly helping editing and that sort of thing.
This is our future work, our future plans. There's a link down there to the bottom if you'd like to see it closer up. But some of them are, as a user of TimeWielder, I'd like to be notified, to be reminded to complete my assignments on time. As I mentioned earlier, we have that to an extent using the third-party site called OneSignal, so we can manually push them and manually make the notifications ourselves, but I'd like to, in the future, make those automated, make it a lot easier. As a user of TimeWielder, I want to be able to set aside time to study for exams and have those times in my calendar so I can keep my day-to-day schedule organized. That we have a functional calendar, but we don't have the ability to reserve study times for exams yet. So that's also something we'd like to add. Um, we'd also like to be able to make it so users can change the due dates of tasks after they've created them, in case like if something gets moved, change the due date. So that's something we'd also like to implement, or a future team could implement. The Kanban board, that's something we would really like to have as well, but we didn't quite get to it yet. And that's something we put on our future plans as well. Recommended study times. So we were hoping that TimeWielder we could make it so that it recommends study times based on your schedule when your exams are, so you can study, give you a good chunk of time to study and focus. You want to be able to work on specific tasks in a certain block of time, similar to the last one, based on when the tasks due and what your schedule is. It'll give you recommended time, what's a good time for you to work on it. And also, finally, be able to remove a task entirely upon its completion. As Jackson showed earlier, we have a button that shows not done, but it's not entirely functional. It's not functional yet. So that's something a future team would like to be able to address in the future.
And that is it. Thank you for listening to our presentation. And if you have any questions, please check out the application on the GitHub link provided. Thank you.